If your renewal came in and the price either went up or you don't know what to do and your next steps are, let's discuss what your options are. Also, some ways to get the price down if the price has gone up, and what are the next steps you should take. The first piece is, how do you renew your insurance policy? It's fairly simple. There's a couple options you have. You can either use their app and go online and just accept the renewal. Some states, there's new documents that you have to sign, so review them, make sure no major changes have happened, and you just accept them. Otherwise, most of the time you're on an auto renewal if you're on a monthly pay or even a quarterly or a pay in full, whatever the term that policy is. So they usually give you either 6 months or 12 months of a policy. You just either auto renew it, which it just continues and nothing becomes of it, but make sure you read the documents first because the changes can apply. So if the price tripled on you, you won't know until that next payment comes out of your bank. It's something that you have to be a little bit involved and understand what is happening with that policy. Now, the second piece is you can decline that offer. Well, it went up 35% and no one can give you a straight answer and you just don't want to renew the policy. You can tell them, please non-renew my policy effective whatever the date is. If you just want it to end when the renewal is up, just say effective the renewal. I want you to cancel the policy. Just be careful because if you don't renew the policy and you don't have another insurance in place, you could be losing a lot of extra money. See, when you go to a new policy and you're coming from an old policy, when you have current insurance, that lowers the risk. That means you already are going from one to the next without having a hiccup. A lot of people who miss the bill or they have an accident or something happens and they just don't renew the policy, those are higher risk because you're coming new without a history. Yes, they can look up your driving history, but it doesn't show the proof that you've had X amount of years with a certain company. Now, can those insurance companies refuse you? They absolutely can. Now, they can only refuse you on the renewal. When they wrote you a policy, they have what's called a 60-day underwriting period in probably almost every state there is, most states. What that means is within the first 60 days, the price could change. They could not like what you're doing. They could say, hey, you didn't tell us the truth about this. You're driving 10 times more miles than you said, whatever the case is, right? So they have that 60-day underwriting period. But once you're locked in and you've got that 60 days locked in, they can't cancel you. They have to keep that policy until that expiration date. That's why most people try to do a 12-month policy because that 12 months guarantees that you're locked in at that price with no restrictions. If you have a claim, it pays out whatever you agreed upon. That's why you'll see some policies to get the price down, you can renew them at a 6-month policy. I know more of the higher risk companies, they prefer to have a 6-month policy because then they can change the rate every 6 months. Bad for you, but if it's not likely that they're going to change, it might save you a couple bucks just to have a 6 months versus a 12-month policy. Well, I want to pay monthly. Well, it doesn't matter. That's the same thing. If you get a 6-month policy, you'll still pay monthly. It's just for 6 months. Or if you got a 12-month policy, you can still pay monthly. It's just you're locked in for that 12-month period. Personally, I prefer the 12-month policy, but it depends on the person and the risk that you're willing to take. So what they can do is they can non-renew you is the term that they use. It's essentially cancel your insurance. So when that renewal comes up, when you've gone through the period that you've chosen, and it comes to that renewal, they're going to send you a letter about 3 weeks in advance. Some companies a little bit longer, but usually 3 weeks is that sweet spot. You'll get a letter, an email, however your communication that you've set up with them is, and they'll tell you we either want to renew you, here's the new price, or we don't want to renew you, sorry, so sad, goodbye. That means you have until the end of that policy, which is usually that 3 weeks away, to find new insurance. If you don't renew that policy and you don't have an auto pay or some sort of continuation, then it's going to go into a cancellation status. Now, the cancellation status technically means that they can stop, decline, move away from you at any point in time. However, most companies have a grace period. And typically it's 7 to 14 days. If you're willing to pay that policy, and sometimes you got to sign a waiver that says I haven't had any claims, I'm clean driving, no claims are going to show up in the next couple days because of that gap, they'll do what's called a reinstatement. Now there's 2 versions of that. So if you have what's called a clean reinstatement, it's just a reinstatement. It assumes nothing happened. They ignore the fact that you forgot to pay them and they just let you continue. That's kind of a benefit. Some companies, a lot of companies are starting to do what's called a reinstatement with a lapse. They'll reinstate you, but they're going to show on the paperwork that you had a lapse. Technically, and usually there's not a price change. But if you try to use that to go to another company, it's going to show you had a lapse. And when having that lapse, you lost all that credit that we just talked about that you get for having current insurance. Most of that credit comes when you've had at least 6 months with your prior carrier. By the way, if you are shopping for new insurance and looking for a local agent, I've got several agents in the area that are licensed in multiple states. So if you're looking for someone that can compare the prices across multiple companies without having to have 100 phone calls or 100 quotes, go ahead and check out the description below. It'll go through the details and help you out. Now, when it renews, there's 3 things you should think about. There's really technically 3 coverages, and I'll link a video at the end of this that goes into more depth. Essentially, you've got the 3 parts of insurance. You've got coverage for you, coverage for others, and coverage for your vehicle. The coverage for you is the liability pieces. So if we're going to analyze that policy that's renewing, make sure that no changes have been made. Technically, legally, they're not supposed to change them, but I have seen it happen. So it's one of those unfortunate things where the agents click. Maybe it's a mistake, or maybe they're just trying to save themselves from losing a customer, but make sure that all of the current policy limits were the same or better as the last policy limits. I can't tell you how many times I quote somebody that has missing coverages. I've got a friend currently that has 10,000 property damage, and they have all the better coverages of everything else. That means if they crash into a car, they're only covered for 10 grand. Most cars are worth more than 10 grand. So if they have a problem, they have to pay the rest out of pocket, or they're going to get sued. Don't worry, we're going to fix that part. So that's the liability. That's the coverage for others. That's bodily injury and typically property damage. Now you've got coverage for you, which is the coverage for anyone that's in your car. Not always just you. If you have a friend with you, it's the liability, the bodily injury for you guys if you get hurt. Sometimes it's the uninsured and underinsured motorist. And like I said, I'll link a video that gets more in depth with those, but that's the main pieces of it. And then the third piece is the coverage for your vehicle, which is what type of coverage does that car have. People call it full coverage. It's not really a real term in the industry, but we all know what it means. It means you want comprehensive and collision. Comprehensive, if you hit a deer, hit an animal, tree falls on the car, stuff like that, stolen, vandalized. That typically will have a deductible. Most states don't charge a lot for that deductible. The comprehensive isn't very expensive. So if you want to change something, usually the comprehensive deductible, you can keep it where it's at. Now, the collision is where most of the cost comes in because that's the physical damage to your car. Whether you're at fault or not, in most states, they're going to cover the vehicle minus that deductible. Raising or lowering that deductible can fluctuate the price quite a bit. The pieces that you may want to look at if your price has increased is the add-ons. So you have rental car coverage is usually an add-on. You don't have to have that. Some places charge $6 to $10 to $20 a month to have that extra coverage. Towing and road service, that's usually not expensive, but it can be. So make sure that if that makes more sense to get some sort of a membership, you can buy them through your cell phone, you can go to AAA members, you can get all sorts of memberships that give you road service and towing outside of your car insurance. That also plays a factor into claims. When they count the number of claims, usually the towing and road service don't count against you as far as cost, but it does count against you as far as the number of claims. So if you're somebody that has 3, 4 accidents, you may not want to have 4 more claims on there because a lot of companies give you 3 or 4 or even 5 claims and out, and they non-renew you. So make sure that you're within the window, otherwise you might want to get some sort of membership for that. So what factors actually affect my car insurance? When I'm shopping, what should I be mindful of, and what are the parts that are costing me the most? I mentioned the collision is a big piece, but why? Why does collision play such a large factor? I'm going to go over the 5 pieces, and there's probably 20 videos on this channel that go more in depth, so that's a good reason to subscribe and watch some of those. Essentially, the main piece is your vehicle. What is the paint? What is the safety rating? What is the risk of that vehicle having a claim? Some have more injuries than others. That's your safety rating. What is the performance level? Does it have a turbo in it? Is there extra cost to that car over another? If you look at Acura, most of their cars, if not all of them, are listed as performance vehicles. So they listed them that way, which makes the insurance go up. If you look at a Honda, almost none of their vehicles are listed that way. Even their mid-size vehicles come up as a wagon, which is technically a van. And that's beneficial because it's a lower risk, and the type of driver that typically has that has a lower risk. If you're shopping with Kia or Hyundai, you're going to pay a lot more because the cost of those cars this last several years have been the highest stolen vehicles out there. I got a video on this channel if you want. I think I just made it like a week ago. Feel free to watch that if you're buying a Hyundai or a Kia. But that is one of the main reasons a lot of those prices are going up, is that type of vehicle. Because of the theft rate, that's a huge problem for insurance companies. You specifically matter, so the credit that you carry plays a factor, and it goes into more depth, not just credit. It's not just your credit score, but it's a big piece of it. So credit, history, claims, accidents, things like that will play a factor in the costs that you have. Essentially, the best way to get around this is not focus on all of the pieces. Sure, if I combo my home and auto, it's going to give you 20 to 25% off. If I'm at a certain age, I know certain companies like me there. Because of that, it gets a little bit confusing to find the right company, right? Are you going to just get a pen and paper and write down 50 companies and call them all? No, it's going to be a headache. The best way is to find what we call an independent agent. An independent agent can shop you across multiple companies. That's the agency that we run in our state, and so it's helpful to have somebody that can just say, hey, give me your information, let me plug into my system. All right, I've got 12 companies, here's 3 that really like you, here's 4 that kind of like you, and here's one that just absolutely hates you. The price is triple. So let's ignore those guys. Let's focus on what the benefits of these companies are and actually help you find the fit for the cost for the coverages that you're looking for. Once again, link in the description below if you're interested in that type of a quote. The video I'm going to link at the end, take it, compare it, and understand, do I really need all of these coverages? Are these pieces? Can I afford a large deductible? It's got to be affordable, and it has to be the right coverage. If you can't afford a $1,000 deductible, you should pay a couple dollars more or even $10 more a month to not have that $1,000 deductible. It's worth it because you can't come up with the money if you have to. If you have an older car, it might be worth having full coverage even though it costs you more because you can't afford to replace the car. Now, if it's the opposite and you can't afford to replace the car, why carry full coverage unless you just want to have the coverage on it? If you're the type of person that vice versa, right? So all of those options are available. I would say look at that policy and talk with your agent to find out what is the best connection, what is the best fit for you. One of the things that we do at our agency is we call every renewal. So we try to reach out to our current customers and just go over any changes, make sure everything's correct. If the price has gone up, we like to explain why. It's not just inflation. There are other factors that play a factor. And so it's good to at least know what it is, whether it's good or bad news. I would personally like to know that myself. The other piece you got to know is the type of agent that you're working with can and can't be a good thing. Some agents, I'll be honest with you, this industry has been overflooded with people that don't know what they're talking about. So you get a lot of sales agents, which is fine. They can sometimes find you the best deal, but they don't always understand or know the process of things. So they're not really going to be able to help you when you renew that policy with any major questions you'll have. Once again, that's up to you. If you like the agent you're working with, great. Stay with them, talk with them, have discussions. If they don't quite understand what you're talking about or at least can't get you the answers, then maybe it's not the right fit for you for that agent. Each company is looking for a certain profile. So the type of stuff that you have, what we just talked about, the car, the location, your age, all of that stuff creates that profile. And that profile is a fit for certain companies and not a fit for certain other companies. A lot of us have grown up and just really haven't been taught, so we just go to whatever.com site we can go to and we just fill out the quote assuming that we know what we're doing. Most of those you got to be careful with because they'll give you basic coverage, just like my friend did. He didn't realize that whoever sold him that policy, it could have even been him. They might have just let him purchase it. You're purchasing things if you're not aware. You need to talk to somebody to give you that advice to go forward. The two things that I would focus on is what companies are giving the best rates right now and also how to get the best discounts. If you're looking for discounts, I've got a discount video here that you should check out. If you already know what discounts you should be going towards, then I'll put my cheapest insurance here. Keep in mind, cheapest isn't always best, but you'll find out what we're talking about there. Link in the description below if you're looking for a quote. Otherwise, I'm Mark with Think Insurance. I'll see you in the next one.